Asma Shehzadi was born into a world of luxury. Her father, Mohammed Jabir, was one of the richest men in the country, owning businesses that stretched across cities. Yet, when his daughter was born, he said with pride, "Her name will be Asma Shehzadi, not Asma Jabir. She is my princess." From that day onward, Asma lived like royalty in a golden cage built by love and excess. Her father's wealth wrapped her life in silk, while her mother's warnings were buried beneath comfort and indulgence. Her mother tried again and again to make Jabir understand. "You're spoiling her," she would say gently. "If she grows up getting everything she wants, she'll never learn to earn anything herself." But Jabir would laugh it off. "I made this money for her. What use is it if I can't make my only daughter happy?" His love, though pure, became her greatest weakness. From an early age, Asma learned that her wishes were commands. A single glance could summon servants, a single complaint could move her father to spend thousands. Every toy, every dress, every dream she whispered appeared before her as if the world itself obeyed her voice. Her mother's discipline faded in the shadow of Jabir's affection. When she scolded Asma for misbehaving, Jabir would always defend her, saying, "She's just a child." That small sentence shaped her world. Asma grew proud, quick-tempered, and untouchable. When her grandmother once corrected her manners, she shouted back rudely. Her mother was furious, but Jabir dismissed it with calm laughter. "So, what if she misbehaved?" he said. She's still my princess." The words stung her mother deeply, who could only shake her head in helpless sorrow. The more Jabir gave, the less Asma respected. She began believing that money could silence every voice of reason. Her mother saw the storm approaching, but her husband's love had blinded him. "You'll regret this," she said once in tears. "You're raising a storm in your own house." But Jabir only smiled and kissed his daughter's forehead. To the world, they were a perfect family, a billionaire father, a graceful mother, and a charming little girl. But beneath the surface, pride had already begun its quiet work. Asma's heart was learning to measure love by luxury and worth by wealth. She didn't know that every wish granted without struggle was shaping her downfall. The same palace that made her a princess would one day become the reason she forgot how to live like a human being. By the time Asma entered her teenage years, her arrogance had fully blossomed. She was used to being obeyed, admired, and never corrected. At school, her expensive dresses, imported perfumes, and luxury gadgets made her the center of attention. Yet behind every admiring glance was jealousy. And Asma enjoyed it. She liked how the other girls whispered about her designer shoes and the car that dropped her off every morning. She felt superior, untouchable, as if the world existed only to serve her desires. But with that pride came defiance. Whenever a teacher corrected her, she rolled her eyes or laughed sarcastically. When classmates disagreed with her, she mocked them. She had money, confidence, and her father's name. What more power could she need? Slowly, friends turned into enemies, and the school administration began to see her as a problem child. Yet Asma didn't care. The more they warned her, the bolder she became. One afternoon, a small argument with a classmate turned violent. The girl had said something about Asma's attitude, and in a flash of rage, Asma grabbed her water bottle and hurled it across the classroom. It struck the girl's forehead, splitting the skin open. Screams filled the room, and within minutes, teachers rushed in. Asma stood frozen, shocked by what she had done. But deep inside, a strange satisfaction lingered. Her father was summoned to the principal's office the next day. "Mr. Jabir," the principal said gravely, "this isn't the first incident. Your daughter's behavior is damaging our school's reputation. We can't allow her to continue here." Jabir tried to reason, offering donations and apologies, but the decision was final. Asma was expelled. When they returned home, Asma expected her father to be angry, perhaps to scold her or punish her. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, my princess. We'll find a better school, one that deserves you." His words erased every trace of guilt from her mind, but the damage was deeper than he knew. The school sent a letter to other institutions, warning them about her conduct. No one wanted to enroll her. So Jabir decided to bring education home. Tutors came and went, but Asma never cared to learn. When she failed her tests, Jabir paid bribes to make her results appear perfect. "You're brilliant," he would say proudly, handing her a fake report card. With every lie, he built her illusion higher, an illusion where money could buy not just happiness, but even intelligence and reputation. Asma smiled, believing she had conquered the world. What she didn't realize was that her father's love had become her greatest prison, and the chains were made of gold. The luxury that once defined Asma's life soon became her destruction. Her father, though loving, had his own weakness: alcohol. Every evening, bottles lined the table in their grand living room as soft music played and laughter echoed. To Asma, it seemed normal. Her father was powerful, respected, and wealthy. If he could drink freely, why couldn't she? The first sip came out of curiosity. The second was for excitement. And before long, what began as play turned into a secret addiction. When her father wasn't home, Asma would sneak into his cabinet, pour herself a glass, and pretend she was celebrating something grand. The burning taste made her cough at first, but she grew used to it. Soon, she began inviting her friends over, and together they shared those stolen drinks while laughing about how grown-up they felt. They were living dangerously, yet Asma never felt afraid. She believed that her father's money could cover every sin. The truth came out unexpectedly. One night, Jabir found his daughter in the storeroom, holding a half-empty bottle. For the first time in his life, he was speechless. His face turned pale, and his voice trembled as he said, "My daughter, this is wrong. You shouldn't do this." It was the mildest rebuke she could have received, but what Asma truly needed at that moment was a firm hand, one that could stop her before it was too late. Instead, his softness became silent approval. Her mother, however, reacted differently. When she discovered what her daughter had done, she broke down completely. Tears ran down her face as she whispered, "I never thought I'd see my child touch what destroys the soul." Her words carried both pain and prayer. She turned to Jabir in anger, accusing him of poisoning their home. "You keep this filth under our roof and you expect her to stay clean?" she cried. The argument grew into nightly battles, their voices echoing through the halls of the mansion. Weeks later, Asma's mother fell seriously ill. Her condition worsened day by day, but Jabir, consumed by guilt and pride, didn't send her abroad for treatment. He stayed angry, refusing to admit that his choices had broken his family. One cold morning, Asma woke to silence, the kind that only death brings. Her mother was gone. Her father wept beside the bed, but Asma stood quietly, unable to cry. A strange emptiness filled her chest. With her mother gone, the voice of conscience disappeared from the house. For the first time, peace felt like poison. The girl who once had everything had just lost the only person who truly cared about her soul. After her mother's death, silence took over the mansion. For a few days, Asma wandered through the halls, pretending to mourn, but deep down she felt an odd relief. The constant scolding was gone. No one told her what was right or wrong anymore. Her father buried himself in work, and Asma found freedom in his absence. The house became her playground, and luxury her closest companion. She began to fill the emptiness with noise. Every week, she invited her friends for parties. The sound of laughter, loud music, and clinking glasses replaced the voice that once prayed for her. They ordered pizza and expensive food, danced in the living room, and took hundreds of photos to post online. Her social media became her stage, where she performed the role of a glamorous, happy girl adored by everyone. But behind every smile in those pictures was loneliness wearing lipstick. Her father saw her laughing with friends and assumed she was healing. He told himself she was coping in her own way. Yet he didn't know that she had turned his mansion into a secret nightclub. The bottles he thought were untouched had long been emptied, and Asma had mastered the art of deception. Sometimes, when her father returned home tired, she would pretend to be sad, sitting quietly in a dark room. "What's wrong, my daughter?" he would ask in concern. Asma would sigh and whisper, "I feel empty, Baba." Life feels meaningless. The word meaningless was her key. It opened his heart every time. Fearing that she might harm herself, Jabir would promise her anything: money, trips, new cars, just to see her smile again. Asma knew exactly how to play his emotions. She was no longer just spoiled. She had become a master manipulator. With each lie, her heart grew colder. Her father spent millions trying to buy her happiness, but no amount of money could fill the void her mother's truth had left behind. When he gave her something new, she would smile for a moment, then sink again into emptiness. The more she received, the less she valued it. Her friends adored her wealth, but not her heart. They borrowed her things and never returned them, and Ozma never noticed. Her closet was full, but her soul was empty. She had become a reflection of her father's mistake, a girl drowning in riches but starving for meaning. And yet, she didn't stop. The nights grew louder, the lies sharper, and the silence inside her heavier. The mansion still sparkled, but behind those golden walls, Asma Shehzadi was slowly losing the last pieces of herself. Months passed in the same rhythm of parties, laughter, and lies, until one quiet afternoon shattered the illusion. Asma sat in the garden with her father for tea, a rare moment of stillness between them. The sunlight poured through the trees, and for the first time in years, Jabir looked at his daughter carefully. Her once glowing face now seemed dull and lifeless. The softness in her eyes was gone, replaced by something heavy and tired. Her skin had lost its color. Faint lines had begun to show near her eyes. He frowned. "Asma, what happened to your face?" "Why do you look older?" he asked gently. "You go to the salon every week, your wardrobe costs more than most people's houses, yet you look as if you haven't slept for months." Asma froze. She wanted to tell him it was the late nights, the alcohol, the endless emptiness, but instead she forced a small laugh. "I don't know, Baba." "Maybe I'm just tired," Jabir sipped his tea silently. He didn't argue, but something in his expression changed. That silence scared Ozma more than his anger ever could. She could feel him seeing through her, and it unsettled her deeply. A few days later, her secret finally collapsed. Late one night, craving another drink, Ozma sneaked into her father's private room. The lights were off, and she thought he was asleep. As she reached for the cabinet and poured herself a glass, a voice came from behind her. "So this is what you do when you think I'm not watching." She froze, the glass trembling in her hand. Her father stood in the doorway, disappointment written all over his face. He didn't shout. He simply said, "Sit down." The calm in his voice was terrifying. That night, for the first time, Jabir saw the full truth of what his love had created. A daughter broken not by hardship, but by comfort. The next morning, he called Asma's friends to the house. They came nervously, expecting another party. Jabir looked at them and said, "Whoever tells me what my daughter truly does when I'm not here will get 2 lakh rupees." For a moment, there was silence. Then greed spoke louder than loyalty. Her friends began revealing everything: the parties, the alcohol, the boys, the lies. Every word was a knife in Asma's chest. She watched in disbelief as the girls she had trusted sold her truth for money. When they left, Jabir sat back, defeated. "I made you a princess," he said quietly. "But you turned yourself into a stranger. There's nothing left to protect." His voice cracked, but his eyes were made of steel. That was the night the father who once forgave everything made a decision that would change both their lives forever. The night her friends betrayed her, Asma sat alone in her room, her mind spinning in disbelief. She could still hear her father's voice echoing through the hallway, calm, wounded, final. "There's nothing left to protect." Those words cut deeper than any anger could. For the first time in her life, she was afraid of him. Not because he might hurt her, but because she had finally lost the man who once loved her without limits. The next morning, Jabir didn't speak to her. He didn't come to her room, didn't ask if she'd eaten, didn't even look her in the eye. The silence was heavier than punishment. Then, one afternoon, a group of guests arrived at the mansion. A few elders, a man dressed simply, and a registrar. Asma came downstairs in confusion, wearing a silk robe, unaware of what was about to happen. Her father stood near the door, his face pale but firm. "Asma," he said, his voice steady. "Today you will be married." Her eyes widened. Married? To whom? Jabir stepped aside, and from behind him emerged a man in worn clothes, his eyes downcast, his face familiar. It took Asma a few seconds to recognize him. The beggar she had once humiliated outside her car months ago. The same man she had ordered the guards to beat for daring to ask for help. She gasped, her voice trembling. "You can't be serious." "I am," Jabir said coldly. You mocked humility. You destroyed decency. You turned blessings into poison. You thought you were above everyone. Now you will live like those you insulted. Asma burst into tears. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter. He looked at her long and hard, minute. No, Asma. You were my daughter. The girl I raised died the day she lost her shame. Today, I bury my mistakes. His tone was neither cruel nor emotional. It was the voice of a man forced to cut off his own hand to save his soul. The marriage took place that same day. Asma's signature trembled on the paper. Her tears smeared the ink. The guests whispered, the servants watched in silence, and the beggar stood quietly, almost unsure of the strange turn of fate. When it was over, Jabir handed her a small bag of clothes and a little money, nothing compared to what she was used to. Take these, son, he said. You'll need them more than your diamonds. And never come back. Asma screamed, begged, fell to her knees. But he didn't look back. The man who had built palaces for his daughter had just sent her into a world where even a roof was a blessing. Her golden life ended at the gate of her father's mansion, replaced by a reality she had never known before. When Asma arrived at her new home, reality struck her like a storm. The man she now called her husband walked ahead in silence, leading her through narrow, uneven streets that smelled of dust and smoke. They stopped in front of a crumbling house barely held together by rusted sheets and cracked walls. There were no servants, no marble floors, no chandeliers, just emptiness, silence, and a single flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. This is home, he said flatly, pushing open the wooden door. Asma stepped inside, stunned. There was one old cot in the corner, a small stove, and a few tin plates stacked carelessly on a broken shelf. The air smelled of damp earth. Her throat tightened as she whispered, "Where will I sleep?" He pointed to the floor. "Anywhere you like." That night, he lay on the cot while she sat by the staircase, hugging her knees. Sleep refused to come. Her body ached from the cold, and her mind replayed every insult she had ever thrown at people less fortunate than her. For the first time, she understood what humiliation truly felt like. When morning came, she found him sitting outside, calmly drinking tea. "Where's breakfast?" he asked, not looking up. Asma blinked in disbelief. "You expect me to cook?" He shrugged. "You can't expect food to appear by itself. I'm not your father, and this isn't your palace. If you want to eat, you'll have to cook." Anger flared inside her, but hunger was stronger. She tried to cook for the first time in her life, but the food turned out nearly inedible. Her husband took one bite and spat it out. "What is this? Didn't your mother teach you anything?" The mention of her mother hit her heart like a knife. Tears filled her eyes, but he didn't soften. "You'll learn," he said simply, "or stay hungry." For days, Asma tried to adjust. She swept the floors, washed the dishes, and fetched water from the nearby hand pump. Her delicate hands blistered, her skin darkened, and her once smooth hair became tangled and rough. The mirror showed a stranger, a woman stripped of pride, dressed in worn-out clothes, her eyes heavy with regret. Each night when her husband left to beg for food, she stared at the sky and whispered, "God, why is this happening to me?" But deep down, she already knew the answer. This was not cruelty. It was correction. The price of arrogance paid through hardship. Weeks turned into months, and the once proud princess became a shadow of her former self. Every trace of luxury was gone, replaced by dust, labor, and long, silent nights. Asma now woke up before sunrise to sweep the floors and light the small stove. Her hands were no longer soft, her nails cracked, and her palms roughened. The smell of poverty had settled into her clothes, her hair, even her dreams. But strangely, for the first time in her life, she began to think, really think, about what she had been. Each day brought a new lesson in humility. When she went to fetch water, children laughed at her torn shawl. Old women who had once bowed before her father's wealth now looked at her with pity. At first, she hated it, every stare, every word, but over time, the anger faded. The humiliation that used to burn her pride now began to cleanse it. Her husband remained distant, neither cruel nor kind. He spoke little and spent his days outside, returning at night with just enough food for them both. He never hit her, never insulted her, yet his silence was sharper than any punishment. It forced her to face herself. One evening, as she washed the few dishes they owned, she caught her reflection in the metal plate. The woman staring back at her had sunken cheeks and weary eyes. She barely recognized that face. "What have I become?" she whispered. The truth hit her hard. She had become exactly what her arrogance deserved. For the first time since childhood, Asma prayed, not for wealth or comfort, but for forgiveness. "If this is punishment," she said softly, "then let it purify me." Her tears fell silently onto the floor as she bowed her head, her heart aching with guilt for the way she had treated her parents, her friends, and even strangers. Slowly, a strange peace began to form inside her. The noise in her mind, the arrogance, the greed, the pride, all began to fade. She found comfort in small things: the warmth of the morning sun, the sound of rain on the roof, the simple act of sharing a meal with her husband in silence. Though her body lived in poverty, her soul had begun to heal. For the first time, Asma understood that wealth was not gold or silk or luxury. It was a clear conscience. It was peace after repentance. And though she still lived among broken walls, her heart finally began to rebuild what she had lost. By the 4th month, Asma had accepted her new life with quiet surrender. She no longer argued, no longer cried for her old world. Her days passed in simplicity, cooking, cleaning, and waiting for her husband to return at dusk. But one night changed everything. It was late, and the air outside was thick with rain. Her husband hadn't returned yet, and Asma decided to take his meal to his room instead of leaving it by the door as usual. She opened the creaking door softly and froze. Inside, her husband sat laughing with 3 women. They were dressed boldly, sitting close to him, speaking in teasing voices. The sight hit her like a knife. Her heart pounded violently in her chest. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then, trembling, she said, "What is this?" He turned his head slowly, unfazed. "What does it look like?" Her voice cracked. "You brought other women into this house? After everything I endured?" He looked at her coldly and said, "You talk as if you were innocent. Before you married me, how many men did you talk to? How many sins did you hide behind your father's name?" Asma's knees weakened. "That was different," she whispered. "No," he said firmly. "This is what betrayal feels like. You lived in sin, mocked decency, laughed at people like me. Now you know what it feels like to be broken." She dropped to her knees, sobbing. "Please," she begged, "don't do this. If you must punish me alone. But don't destroy what little faith I have left in goodness." The women laughed cruelly, enjoying her humiliation. Her husband suddenly stood and silenced them with a gesture. His voice grew calm, serious. "Enough. Leave us." The women exchanged glances but obeyed, stepping out into the night. Asma sat motionless, her tears still falling. He walked closer, his expression unreadable. "Do you want to know the truth?" he asked. "Your father asked me to do this." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "What?" "He came to me months ago," he continued, "honey. He said you were lost, proud, reckless, heartless. He wanted you to understand what pain and humility feel like. Every hardship you faced, every silence of mine, every test, all of it was his plan. But our marriage is real. He just wanted you to live, not in luxury, but in truth." Asma stared at him, speechless. The man she thought hated her had only been playing a role in a lesson of redemption. Her father hadn't abandoned her. He had saved her in the only way left. That night, she cried not from anger, but from awakening. For the first time, she felt gratitude even in humiliation. And as she watched her husband quietly extinguish the lamp, she realized that the darkness around her was finally beginning to lift. The morning after her husband revealed the truth, Ozma sat silently on the veranda, watching the sunlight creep across the dusty floor. She had not slept all night. Her eyes were swollen, yet her heart felt strangely calm, as if the storm within her had finally broken, leaving only quiet waves behind. When her husband stepped outside, she looked up at him with steady eyes. "I have no anger left," she said softly. "You were right. I needed to see the world without gold and mirrors. I needed to see myself." He nodded, saying nothing, but there was a faint trace of warmth in his expression. "Then what do you want to do now?" he asked. "You're free to decide. Stay or leave, I won't stop you." Ozma looked down at her hands. The same hands that once wore diamond rings and now bore scars from washing, cooking, and cleaning. They told the story of who she had become. "I'll stay," she whispered. "Not because I have to, but because I've finally learned what life means." That evening, the two of them went together to meet her father. When Jabir saw his daughter at the door, dressed simply but with a light in her eyes he hadn't seen in years, he froze. His hands trembled as he stepped forward. "Asma," he said in disbelief. She ran into his arms, and for a long time neither spoke. He held her tightly, tears running down his face. "Forgive me," he murmured. "It was the only way left to bring you back to yourself. I couldn't bear to lose you to your own arrogance." Asma shook her head. "No, Baba. Don't ask for forgiveness. You saved me. You took everything from me so I could finally find something real." Jabir smiled through his tears. "Now you're truly my daughter, the one your mother prayed you would become." He offered them both a new beginning, a small house, a job for her husband, and a life built on honesty, not wealth. Ozma accepted his help with gratitude but chose to live modestly, refusing to depend too much on her father's fortune. She wanted her peace to come from her own effort. Days turned into months, and their home filled with laughter, not the loud, hollow kind of her past, but the gentle kind that comes from content hearts. Ozma spent her mornings cooking, her afternoons helping children in the neighborhood study, and her evenings praying beside her husband. In that simplicity, she found what millions of riches could never buy: peace. She had once been a princess in a palace, but now she was something far greater, a woman who had conquered herself.